Jesus left that place and went to the region of Judea beyond the Jordan. Crowds again gathered around him, and was his custom, he began to teach them. Some Pharisees came, and to test him they asked, "Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife?" He answered them, "What did Moses command you?" And they said, "Moses allowed a man to write a certificate of dismissal and to divorce her." But Jesus said to them, "Because of your hardness of heart, he wrote this commandment for you. But from the beginning of creation, God said, 'What God has joined together, let no one separate.'" People were bringing little children to him in order that he might touch them, and the disciples spoke sternly to them. When Jesus saw this, he was indignant and said to them, "Let the little children come to me, do not stop them, for it is to such as these that the kingdom of God belongs. Truly, I tell you, whoever does not receive the kingdom of God as a little child will never enter it." This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
6 hours ago, it was 11 o'clock a.m. in London and in Bristol, England. In London, there is a beautiful chapel on City Road that John Wesley had built. Remember that he and Charles were Anglican priests all of their adult life after college and seminary, but they preached, wrote hymns, sang at crossroads and marketplaces outside coal mines because a bishop had said you cannot preach in the Anglican church again until you can constrain your enthusiasm. So since the Church of England was the church, they built two places to worship. One was called a chapel and one was called the New Room, the one in Bristol. John ended up the last years of his life in his 80s living in an apartment that adjoined the church on City Road. Charles and his family lived in an apartment just a short walk from the New Room in Bristol, and he died there. These two places are very similar. At a time when the altar was usually way back against the wall and you had a lectern on one side and the pulpit on the other, the Wesleys believed that everything should be center-focused, and you sort of gave importance, as it were. The table was sort of on the main level. Then the liturgist was sort of second rung up, if you would, and then the pulpit was halfway between the balcony and the floor, so that those in the balcony were as close to the preacher as were the people seated on the main floor level. Neither room is nearly so large as this one, but the design was similar. So in those two places 6 hours ago, British Methodists were gathering at the table. The very same tables where John and Charles celebrated the sacrament nearly 300 years ago. In small churches, in great cathedrals around the world today, in every one of the 24 time zones, as 11 o'clock comes, there are people who are celebrating the sacrament with you, this long table. Then I open the lection, and here is all this business about divorce on Worldwide Communion Sunday. And I thought, surely our scholars from the Roman Catholic Church, the Episcopal Church, the Eastern Orthodox Church, the Lutherans, the Presbyterians, the Methodists, the Disciples could have done better for this first Sunday in October. But this is the lection from Mark's Gospel. Let's take a look. Number one, Mark says Jesus left that place and went across the Jordan, and that would have been into a territory called in biblical time Perea. Perea was just in the westernmost part of Jordan on the east side of the river, and was ruled over by a tetrarch named Herod Antipas. We are told immediately by Mark, Pharisees came to test him. I read 6 different scholars this week, and all of them said the Pharisees are not asking a question because they're going to change their minds, depending on Jesus' answer, but because they're trying to get him into hot water as John the Baptizer had been in hot water with this same tetrarch over this same issue. When John the Baptizer spoke out about Herodias and Herod Antipas' marriage, Herodias was married first, remember, to Herod Antipas' brother, and then was divorced, and the second brother married her. All kinds of terrible things going on in the royal palace and family. John the Baptizer spoke out against that, and it ended up costing him his head. So if we can get Jesus to take a stand, maybe we can get rid of him as well. Jesus is speaking into that situation. People ask you questions who already have their minds made up. My third year here, our Barton Clinton Gordy presenter was Dr. William J.A. Power, who had taught me at Perkins School of Theology, SMU. He was a Canadian Anglican who taught all of his adult lifetime after getting his PhD at Perkins School of Theology, Southern Methodist University. His specialty, the Torah, or in Greek, the Pentateuch, the 5 scrolls. And in one of his presentations from this pulpit, he said, in talking about Genesis 2, Adam and Eve were doing fine until they stopped to talk to a snake. So what are we learning here? Don't talk to snakes. That's what he said. Don't talk to snakes. This week somebody asked me what I thought about the latest book in America that says God is dead. I remembered when I was in seminary, a professor at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, named Tom Altizer, wrote a book, God is Dead. In America, if you want to write a book that sells, 3 ideas for you. Dieting, cookbook, book about God dying. Either one of those, all 3, they sell well. But that doesn't mean you and I have to read them all. When Tom Altizer wrote his book, it upset